All right. So, I just had the points I sent over to look at. There's been some new tooling release from OpenAI.
I saw that. That is very helpful.
It is very helpful. What's interesting is that they're doing something very fancy to be able to provide that output, because when you submit your JSON schema, there's a delay of about 10 seconds or so, and then it is cached indefinitely, so it doesn't actually
Oh,
get
are they
deleted.
doing some kind of micro fine tuning on your JSON
It's
schema
almost
or
like
something like that?
they've got something like an embedding model or something. Yeah, micro fine tuning. Yeah, it's what it sounds like, and then it tunes the model to output just that schema, and they reckon that it's 100%. So
Right. And reading through that article, yeah, there's the usual kind of, okay, try this and here it is, offer it and all that kind of thing. But
yeah,
on the face of it, if they can offer something and like take it at the face of it, then what we need to be doing is reverting back to JSON, I'm guessing, because they didn't say anything about Markdown, did they? As far as I can see.
oh no, but like we don't need the benefit I saw in that is that when we do function calling, now the function calls will always be correctly formatted, whereas in the past it was just good luck that they hadn't been called with invalid parameters,
Yep.
because I actually do validation of the parameters that come back from the model, and I haven't seen an error once, but they reckon that it can, so they would know.
Well, last time I talked using JSON, I think it was about 2 months ago, and yeah, every now and again, it's like, even syntax every now and
Yeah,
again, like, so you had to put it around the boy in order to get the right one. Usually got a second shot every time, but the use on the bot side is so on the receiving side, absolutely needs to know what it is, but on the bot side, then we start prompting it to fill the fields that was stipulated with the right useful information, knowing that that information is going to get through. And that, I think, is just a bit like putting two pieces of a jigsaw together. It's like,
yeah.
the fit, that's great, or you can hit it with a hammer. Yeah, that was very interesting. The second interesting thing was the process. Now, um, this is your text starting separating final answer from supporting reasoning or additional commentary, and they had the reasoning steps. Now,
Yeah, so I'll show you that running. I implemented that immediately, and I noticed an improvement in the quality of the responses straight away. Again, I apologize for the quality of the interface. It really is just simply a debugger at the moment.
yeah, no, I still have it.
So we should break here.
Oh, by the way, just heads up, I've probably only got about an hour.
That's
Right.
cool. That's probably about all I can manage to. Okay, so here's the results back from running this test file, which is just the starter for 10 test file.
Yeah.
That all it does is say, list the 10 customers, and here's 3 expectations that we want to see back.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and now by telling it to go through its reasoning, well, you can read it yourself. This is,
Oh, that is much better. And this actually, coincidentally, I'll show you what I've been doing on the writing down the reasoning behind the tests. It goes quite nicely into it because,
Right.
for example, expedition is short. List all customers. The assistant's response was this. The response was informative, short, and so on. What you're doing is you're handing off from one part of the process to another. And I was actually exploring this, I didn't know about this at the time, but it seems to be rational in order to look at a kind of multi-step reasoning for the tests, which
Well,
are generated for the CRM.
right.
CSI.
It. What I think is happening is because it's laying out how it's thinking, its final result is much more likely to be correct than if it was just a single utterance.
Yeah.
Plus, it has the added benefit of when we store these results, we can interrogate or read or see what the reasoning was, which sort of helps us understand the test failure a bit better as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm really pleased with that. I think it's a fabulous expansion of capability that we should try and use everywhere. And where I'm going to apply it next is the switchboard and the summoner, so that we can tell it to reason why it thought how it did, so we can see what's happening, but also the result should be of higher quality too. The amount of the delay in token generation is negligible for this quite a radical lift in quality, and like 1,000-fold improvement in debuggability.
The interesting thing, now I've not looked at this because literally 20 minutes before coming on here, saw your post there. Thing that struck me is the reasoning actually doesn't need to be contained. It can talk about other things. So
What do you mean by that?
by that I mean you can look at, remember that the work around intent.
Yep.
Intent seems to fit neatly in there. It's like the why. It's like, okay, so yeah, you could tell an 8-year-old do this, and this is what we're expecting, blah 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 blah. But if you put in there the overall thing I'm trying to achieve here is, for example, if there is a flow that a customer agent gets a complaint, goes up to the duty manager, goes, okay, right, deal with it. Here's the answer, and then there's an email out. Now that's a process flow, but it's pretty cold. Right? The intent is what you were talking about yesterday, which was what does the customer want? So we put in the outward-looking thing. The intent is to make sure that the customer is happy, or at least content with your response and your response time. I think that I'm not sure because as I said, I only looked at this sort of 10 minutes ago. But it seems that we don't need to contain the reasoning to simple reasoning steps like do this, do that, do that, do that. We can also put in things like, overall, the intent is this. And that is just being nice to the bot. What we're trying to do by giving you this recipe of 8-9 moves, here's what we're trying to do. I don't know whether it'll, how it respond to that, but it feels like, because it's NM.
Yeah, but that's you giving it more instructions, whereas this principle was about giving it space to think.
So this is it's like a principle of this is like a military principle. You can give people commands, and they'll just run off and do the commands, but it's much more powerful. It's called commander's intent. It's like, okay, I'm giving you these commands, but this is what I intend overall to happen. And if you get bumps along the line, always consider my intent. And you can go off piece slightly, as long as you meet the intent. So the intent is a really powerful thing, certainly in command control inside the militaries. If you don't know your commander's intent, your one-up's intent, then you can do really stupid things because things are, when reality hits and you actually try to run this, it's slightly different. And then you just keep on going down the path. Now, the typical example of this is the likes of Chinese and Russian military doctrine is you just do what you're told by your one-up, whereas Western doctrine is you need to understand what the commander intended with this whole set of commands, and that is at the back of your head when you meet something that's unexpected, because you can still do these steps, but it's like, right. For example, my intent here is to test whether we can recall the number of customers in the database. It's like, okay, so, this customer number, steps, whatever it is. Now, if there's no customers in there, you should be able to, or even if it was a complete erroneous thing that happened to be -1 customer, so you can still actually give some useful information if you know the original intent, which is the whole, the reason behind the must shoulds, coulds, must nots together really is there in order to instantiate an intent. Now, the intent seems like it could go in there, but it's outward looking. It gives a wider context, saying, here's why I'm giving you all these steps, and here are the steps to take. If you need to deviate slightly, make sure that the intent is still met.
Okay, so that just sounds like a standard format for how you want to write prompts, or how you get the creator bot to ask questions of the human to refine the prompts. And you should be able to see overall an improvement of, if you're given a bunch of tasks to improve the agent response, then that would be part of the repertoire of tools. Like, is there an intent, and is the intent clear, and is the failure due to a lack of intent or a lack of clarity of the intent?
Right, and that's where the intelligence comes in. You just bring me a better, although fairly weird analogy. If you're commanding a rover on Mars to go from this place to that place, and you give it left, right, forward, left a bit, whatever, a whole bunch of commands. If the intent is, that rock over there, that's actually what we're trying to get to, and get halfway through the commands.
That's that is the difference between imperative and declarative programming. So you should be able to have a set of rules that check prompts for known fallacies and known weaknesses, and being imperative versus being declarative is the difference there. Like, you must always declare what you want and allow the AI to figure out how to get it. If you want to provide steps, you can, but you must declare what you want. And then steer with everything else.
Is a small change in the reality of the situation can actually make, if you had a chain of 8 commands and number 4 was slightly different from expected, then you can actually go off piste quite quickly.
Yeah.
And in
imperative's bad. It's generally accepted that imperative is not the way to do things.
Certainly not with AI. Yeah. That's
well, in traditional programming as well, it's not. It's all modern frameworks attempt to be declarative, where you say what you want, and then the system gives you what you want, and it's free to deliver that any way it can.
Yeah, and I've been kind of pistol whipping it in the in HAL 3 at the moment with the intent, like, make sure, do I really understand what you're doing? Because then you get high quality answers. But actually, this seems to not quite make it redundant, but pretty close. It's like, okay, well, just tell us what you want, and here's the steps that you think. But just always bear in mind what actually my intent is here.
Okay.
I'm quite excited about this. I want to play with it, actually. Is it only on the API?
What's that?
Is it only on the API, or is it?
Oh,
in
it's
bot form?
yeah, it's only in test form because what I've been doing is making a file format for the tests. So that's been quite a bit of time. I made this. This is now that my screen is small, it's kind of hard to read, but this is a schema from this line down is a schema for describing how the tests work. And I'll just,
Mm-hmm.
this is quite important that we are in agreement or have a shared understanding with this part. Um, so, what I'm doing is you have your test spec or your test file.
Mm-hmm.
I never touch it. That's the thing that has the format that we've discussed and all that.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you say you want to run it, then I will make a single file, which I don't know the good name of yet, but it's basically a run record or a test report. I
Mm-hmm.
really want to call it a TPS um, report, but that's just that is the
Mm.
TPS report
It
effectively.
is a TPS report. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Yes.
Inside the TPS report, how I'm breaking it down. So there's inside the test file, the key structure is there's a list in order in the document. There's a list of tests to be run
Mm-hmm.
in the TPS report. To produce a TPS report, I take each test in isolation and in parallel, and then
Mm-hmm.
inside it, I create a dedicated branch for each one that's going to be the place that the test runs. I can't be bothered drawing the rest, I'm sorry. Inside of each one, I run the variations. So if you didn't want any variations, you'll just get one run.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it works is that you get these variations, and then the summary of the results is constantly being updated into the summary of the run variations. So even
Mm-hmm.
if you asked for 1,000 variations, you can look at the TPS report because it's being updated live, and you can see things like we intend to do 1,000 runs. We've completed 30. The estimated time of completion is X. Here is the ratio of pass to fail as it
Mm-hmm.
stands right now. So you can look at it and get like early results type of thing.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
And then what I'm doing with that file is that's the thing that you would look at in the state board, because I can make a widget that will sort of, because it's a very large file with a lot of information potentially in it. That's why I was going to make it have a widget eventually that lets you interact with it easier than you can with just pure chat.
Mm-hmm.
In doing
Okay.
so, I'm
Yeah.
starting to see a clearer path of what it means to be a jitter, what these widgets are, how they come into play, which ones need to be made, how they're controlled by the AI, all those types of things. Because we'd sort of lost sight of jitters for a bit while we got the core logic going, but I think I can see them coming into focus again.
Yeah, and now we've got a certain way of passing over information from NL bot in JSON, then assuming that makes actually the production of the jitter much more certain.
Yeah,
Um,
because if this object is fixed to a schema and the model is guaranteed to fix it to a schema. So here was a special case and where I had to write some code, which I hate now,
Mm.
to allow the bot to manipulate this file without reading the whole file into context. For example, if you think of the number of variations was 1,000, that's a very large file.
Yeah.
And so making a tool that just like when a new variation completes, I made a tool that is like add variation, test ID. And that's all the model has to call. And then under the hood, I just do basic reading and writing to like read the file in, smush the thing on the bottom, update the summary automatically, and then write it out to disk. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's an example of where it was a little bit of code, and I wonder if it couldn't be genericized, this ability to work on a large structured JSON object in ways that don't pull things into context. But for now, yeah, I had to write some code. However, it's like code that gets used a lot, like every single test run, that code gets used, so that sort of feels reasonable at that
It
scale.
it does. I'm actually quite pumped by this because what falls at the bottom, for example, is drill down,
Yeah,
um, and also
filter.
chunk up. You can chunk up. You could have one. You've got your test run, and you could have one line saying of all the ones. We've got 8 fails out of 1,000, 1,001, 1,002, 1,000
Right,
another fail. That sort of thing. It's like, okay, show me the fails,
right.
and you're just going to
So I
go, yeah,
want to I
this
want to describe to
feels
you how
good.
I saw this widget going as a means of teasing out the limits of what a jitter is and isn't.
Mm.
In this widget, I would imagine um, being able to select an individual test and just rerun that test alone. And the way it would do it
Yeah.
is it would load up the prompt. The prompt of the session would be over here, and then when you click the button there, a conventional mouse clicky button that said rerun, it would load that prompt with saying rerun test number one for
Right,
three
which is
variations.
button bot kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not button bot. It's a conventionally coded UI that has a button that has a function call where that function call simply loads the prompt.
Yes. Well, the button bot at the moment is got a name and then a natural language prompt that comes after it.
Right. So
Um,
this is a chance for the developer to actually hard code what those prompts are going to be. And this is where because
mhm.
I do not trust that this widget can be generated using a bot.
um, hmm, hmm. Okay, so
It
I'm the more purist on that. Possibly, and we'll just have to try it.
it is
Possibly could.
possible. It is possible that we can lay a framework or a foundation for widgets, and then we can use a bot to chat with you to help you make new widgets on the fly. But they will not have any. They will not be able to be generated from nothing on the fly and then be tested and proven to work. So I'll admit that there may be a tool we can make that lets you build these widgets using just NL, but
Yeah, but you've got your pre-configured ones that always do this and
you
are
need them
testable.
tested. Like there's too many things that could go wrong because you're basically
Right.
doing the
It's like
equivalent of making an agent when you make a
exactly.
widget. And that,
So yeah, I think I understand you now. I agree. So there's certain actions, and this has always been the concern, and which is why I've been a proponent of shifting between NL to a click. Uh, when you want to click, you're wanting an action to take. Now, say cancel run
yeah,
from the CRM.
Yeah.
You don't want any nonsense there. You want it actually just to do it.
Just do it.
Just
Yeah.
fucking do it.
Yeah.
But you could also have a button saying "Tell me more,"
Yeah.
which the prompt could be whatever, you know.
Totally. Totally. And
Yeah.
then there's another type of button interaction that pre-populates a prompt but doesn't press enter on it. So
Mm-hmm.
for example, if I select this test by just clicking on it,
Mm-hmm.
I would expect that the prompt should indicate that I have selected a piece of
Oh, I
data
see. Oh, I
because
see. Oh no, that's quite nice because
because
that's
now I
more
want to talk
polite.
about it.
That's more polite, isn't it? So you click on something and
Yeah,
saying, "Yeah, here's what you're about to
it's
ask."
the selection, right? And so what I'm
Yeah.
starting to sniff is these UI rules that you need for a widget. Like if I select something, first of all, the selection needs to be very clear. So all of these items need to have the ability to highlight their selection, which is not typically a requirement of a UI generally. And so when you
What do you mean by highlight your selection? What do you mean by that?
well, if this is just a panel that's just displaying a test
Mm-hmm.
in a traditional UI, if I click on it, nothing happens because it was just a panel, right? And the panels
Mm-hmm.
don't respond to clicks, and so nothing happens. But in
Mm-hmm.
a natural language widget, what you need to happen is you need the panel to highlight or indicate to the user that it's been selected at the same time as the prompt indicating that
Oh yeah, that's nice. That's
that
nice.
that
Yeah.
relationship has occurred, because now I'm about to interact with the system about this very narrow thing, but the widget needs to be capable of showing that.
So if you had like I just do here four buttons in order to do drill down or some action, you can go up and down those four,
Yeah.
and then you've got pre-populated. What would the prompt be when you click?
Well,
Give
depending
us
on
a
what you want
scenario
to
here.
do, like if I I'll just apologize for the painstaking nature of this, but these details cannot be over thrashed. If I click on this element and it populates my selection up here, and then I say in the text, um, what do you think this test is about?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then the machine would go off and do something around that. But contrast that to rerun, where rerun was a button. I would go click, and then it would populate the prompt with rerun test number in, and then hit enter, and off it would go.
Right. So it's a bit like the same kind of cognitive thing where you send an email and it's like undo. It's like no, that wasn't meant to be the send. But if you hover over it, saying
It's more
how to
no,
send an email.
it's more about saying that there are buttons that you want something to happen, which means it's going to also press enter on the prompt. But then there's this concept of selection, where you're touching something because you want to talk about it in a way that the buttons don't give you, or you're not really sure, or you might just want some help or whatever. But you need to be able to indicate to the system what is your focus.
So see if I've got this right. I may not have. All right. So you hover and it pre-populates the prompt that will be
You mean
um,
select?
um, uh, not click. So when I say hover
So I
in
didn't
between,
I didn't click a button, but I clicked on an area that was highlightable. Is that
right.
yeah?
Sorry, I just assumed it would be a hover because a hover would be quite nice. It's like go down these and then
Well, no,
as you
because
go down.
there's a distinction between, if I click something or touch it, I want something to happen. But if I clicked on an area that wasn't a button, that should become a selection. If I just hovered, it doesn't really work, because I don't want to change the selection here based on hover, because if I set a selection and then for me to move my mouse somewhere else,
Oh yeah, you got to do
I'm
that thing where you got to, you know.
you got to
Moving
play
the mouse in the
operation just
backspace.
to
Yeah.
get your mouse
Okay.
out of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
thing, right? But
That's
then
awesome.
additionally, if I hold the control key, I should be able to select multiple selectable areas, and that would show up as multiple things here. Like I might say,
And then
who
you'll be
wrote
asked,
all these tests?
right. So take it into the CRM world. Say if you had a bunch of buttons, cancel this run, cancel all of Tuesday,
Cancel Tuesday.
updates,
Yeah,
this, yeah, update this thing. It's like, okay, so you can select all those, but the thing I think you're getting at is then you can go into NL and saying, okay, so tell me about these. If I were to run them all, what's actually going to happen? It's a bad analogy because
that's a good question.
those don't go, but it's like, yeah, it's like, uh, if I should I click these, what's going to happen?
Yeah,
Which is really nice because normal UIs, it's like you click on it, and maybe you get a pop up saying, "Are you sure?" And it's like, well, I don't know. I was sure. I'm not sure now because you asked me whether I'm sure. I don't know. Why should I not be sure? But this one, you can say, right, okay, so what would happen? Okay, understand it. I get it.
yeah. So what I'm seeing with these widgets is that if you build them the right way, you can allow all of their configuration to be done using a JSON object. And so in a even in the simplest widget, you probably want to give it the ability to um, go back in history. So because it's Git, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I might, when I summon the state board, I might configure it with the current thing to view is the tip or the head or the latest commit, right? But then if I typed into the box, what did this test look like 2 months ago?
Mm-hmm.
Then the bot would figure out the history of the TPS report, and then it would re-display the state board, but it would configure its starting state to be this particular commit. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I'm seeing is that these widgets, you can build them in such a way that the bot can intelligently configure some things about them on the fly, so long as the widget is built that way.
Okay, that works. That's got legs. Um,
But the trick is that the widget itself, I have zero confidence that we can, in a reasonable time, figure out a system that would allow us to build a widget using NL that was built faster and performed better than one that I could manually make.
so what would be? So we talked about two types of widgets: the dynamic widgets, like the "Tell me more," and that is the context of what you've been talking about. And
Well,
then
yeah,
there's the
yeah.
"Do this," which is the pre-configured one. So, what's how does the system know that actually you want to
Because
use
because
this
the
pre-configured one?
because the widget itself is an enclosed piece of code that was delivered by a developer as a unit, and you
Yeah, but
can
how does it know that it needs to display? Say if there's a context switch.
so a particular agent would be told what widgets it has available, and each widget would be called by a function call.
So these are like the tools that you've got at the top of the MD, only
Yeah,
as widgets.
they
You've
are
always got these available.
they are exactly that. I think they are presented in the MD as they present in the MD as a function call, and it's like show
Right.
this widget in the state board.
So correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but this sounds quite cool. So the sysprompt has a bunch of pre-configured widgets
Yep.
that are available.
Yep.
It decides the context about when it should or shouldn't do that. But
Correct.
if it says display it, it
Yep.
doesn't have any ability to change the functionality of that. It's baked. It's like when you
It's baked, but it can be made configurable. So the bot can be allowed to change ones. A simple example is when I go to display all the customers in the CRM, I'm going to use a table component. But I'm going to make that
yeah,
table
sure, but that's
component.
like passing in variables, isn't it?
Yeah,
Very
hang
similar.
on,
So
buddy.
it's like,
Hang on,
sorry,
hang on,
all right,
hang on.
sorry. I'm getting excited with this one because this is really cool. Go ahead. Sorry.
Part of the configurability that I will make available to the model is to select the number of columns and the data that goes in each column, so that if the user should only really be shown a 2-column display item, then that's the bot set that and made it be 2 columns as opposed to 5. And
Right.
the bot can do things like set which column is to be sorted by. Is the sort to be alphabetical, ascending, or descending? Other things like that. So depending on the widget, you can give the bot the ability to be more expressive in how it configures the showing state of it.
Right. And if I got this right, a really trivial example would be delete this customer. The delete we know is always going to work, but it still needs a customer ID,
Right,
and so it passes in the customer ID. Right. Um, maybe it's tell me about this customer, and then the bot can say, by tell me, I think you're talking about their address and their history of
right,
accounts or
right,
whatever.
right.
So tell me that, but it's still like tell me. But the execution of it is certain. So there's some things, for example, that in order to press it, well, the button would probably not be, or the widget wouldn't be displayed if the bot doesn't have that information. Number one,
Yeah, the bot chooses when to display it and what to display
right?
it with. So
So,
if we make a panel that is purposely for displaying customers, then the bot would have called the show customer panel, and that panel will pop up in the state board configured how the bot wanted it to be shown.
right, right. But also, so there's like a minimum of information that needs to be passed from the bot. So, show me this customer. You have to have an ID because otherwise the button's not going to know which customer you're talking about. But the bot could also say, by show me this customer, it's already been talking about the accounts, and then as an option, an optional variable that passes saying, okay, I want to know the account history as well, which is in
Right,
context with what you're saying. It's like, show me
right,
the
right.
customer.
Yeah.
So,
So we'd sort of want to yeah. We spent a lot of money and time making trying to make UI elements that were rapidly configurable. And I think only now do they really start to come into play, because the issue was making generic components fit into a almost non-generic system like the CRM. And when you need a UI to present as one, even though it's made up of components, then it becomes very labor intensive to twiddle these custom components to fit this custom whole. Sorry, to twiddle the generic components to fit a custom whole. Whereas the fact that it's a chat interface and you're only dealing with one widget at a time radically simplifies the whole system. It
sure,
also
yeah.
means that you can add better widgets over time because you can do natural language just to get the point across. All
Yeah,
these kinds of
but
things.
also you can switch context. Example, you talk about a customer, and a widget comes up, show me this customer. And it's like, actually, no, I wanted to find all customers on the same street. then you're back to the NL. And if there is, show multiple customers pre-baked, then pass the IDs, and that would be a different button. So you can switch contexts using NL very rapidly, but knowing that you've got this menu of pre-baked buttons, so long as it's got the must-haves information
Yeah,
going
but
through
the
to it.
buttons would typically, so we're talking about a different thing with the button panel, I think, because the I was imagining the button panel showing up in the chat feed, whereas these widgets show up in the state board.
Oh
And
yeah, been conflating button with widget. Sorry, I'd correct myself on that one, but yes, yeah.
but
Um,
I guess there might be no difference. But it's just that um, the dynamic buttons and the button panel would be generated on the fly, and they
oh
can
well,
be
maybe
generated on the fly because a button is very, very simple.
yeah, maybe that's the differentiation. So the stuff in the jitter are all pre-baked and certain, and then in stream the buttons are suggestions. It's like I think you like the
Right, right.
buttons.
The buttons are like dynamically generated on the fly, yeah. But
Maybe that's what it is.
there's also no reason, like making a jitter seems about the same as making an agent. So there's no reason why the widget can't have some um, AI intelligence behind it that is also doing stuff behind the scenes, which means that it could generate dynamically dynamically populated portions within the jitter depending on what the jitter was for. So it's not that it can't do the dynamic content, it's that I currently don't have a use case for it to do that, but it is no different. It is an AI agent. It's just an AI agent with a face.
Right. Sorry. I'm gonna. You lost me on that one. Let me just. So, previously we were talking about this button is got
So what I could do
determined and
is
injectable
like
response.
we talked about buttons causing the prompt to be populated and driven,
That's
but
right.
there's nothing stopping us putting a button in here that drives an agent and an independent thread doing an independent task, doing anything it likes. These widgets can have their own services baked into them as well. They don't need to be just purely cosmetic.
Oh, I see. So, oh yeah, okay, that resolves that.
Yeah.
So there are buttons that are available top of the MD that just do it.
Yep.
Require some variables to go in. That's all cool.
Right.
But there are also potentially contextual things. For example, cancel this pickup, and then there could be show me show me the schedule, for example,
Yeah.
which would involve going off and looking at various
Yeah.
things
So I
and so
guess that using the widgets allows us to strike a bit of a balance between what the users of the system want in terms of traditional UI and what we want in terms of natural language interface and programming.
mm,
And the widgets cost money because they'll work, they're
yeah,
custom
yeah,
work, and so
they're not dynamic.
you can
Yeah.
decide which ones you want and how much you want to spend on them and all that kind of thing. But they become a lot more reusable because they are a dedicated component. One of the things I know that we can do is we can actually allow third-party untrusted widgets to run within a trusted environment by simply loading them inside of an iframe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you're like, I don't trust this code, we didn't make it, but from the library of available widgets, I pulled this one in. It it looks well tested. It's got good reputation scores. I reviewed
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
this and that and the other thing, and that starts to look like the dynamically formed apps where they're pulling off a shelf of pre-tested components and then displaying them even though they've never used them before.
Which is interesting, isn't it? So, for example, if this was right, okay, so just that you're trying to book a journey, and um, the widget is book this train. Then what you're saying is below it could be check if there are rail strikes, which would go off. It's not to do with the system. The system doesn't know anything about rail strikes, but this other service does. I'm going to give you additional information, which also possibly we could put into the context and say, well, okay, there are rail strikes on this one. I still want to get by this time,
Right.
but I really don't care what cost is.
Right.
It should be a natural language thing.
Right. So, like, an untrusted widget can still pass back plain text to be interpreted by the model, and so long as we stay on top of prompt exploitation techniques, then it should be fine.
For those external widgets, and we're getting down in the weeds a bit here, but take that example. I'm about to book a train. Show me information about train strikes or weather or whatever you want. Be helpful to be able to move the output of this externally, or this third party, albeit somewhat concierge information into the prompt, in order then to go back to real, the full natural language saying, I've got these, train strikes, and I still need to get down there. Okay, can you give me more options? And then you come back with the option that work, having gone through NL. And now that book train is actually a different train, but it's still a certain train.
Right. Yeah, well, I guess that calling in a widget is no different to calling in an agent. And so long as you...
But the thing, we might not want to do this, but a third-party widget that generates text, if we could effectively copy and paste it into the main context, because you're looking for additional contextual information. You're trying
Yeah. So it does the equivalent of making an API call. It's gone out, and then new information came back, and now your existing setup, your existing thread should be that much smarter or wiser because of it, right?
Yeah.
And then your attribution bot should calculate, well, that was worth X pennies, and it cost me Y pennies to run the AI, so this person's due X amount of ambient attribution tokens.
Yeah. Okay, so I like this. So it allows drill down, it allows certainty, which is the whole point I've been banging on about, the difference between talking and clicking. And now we're saying the certainty is there because these are pre-baked, the trucking companies need for cancel this run.
Right.
So it allows that. It allows some dynamic third-party stuff. The actual in-thread dynamic stuff, which nothing to do with third-party, is still in thread. And all that's doing is just giving you suggestions about what you might want to ask next, which is just the next prompt.
Yep.
And you've got the select, so you can interrogate. It's like, what happens if I press this button? It's like, you wipe your hard drive. Maybe not.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Seems pretty good, actually.
Sort of holds together, right?
It does.
Okay, so now the next step is that I'm starting to see the power of these widgets when you arrange them in a workflow. And a workflow, as we discussed previously, is similar to a switchboard operation. There's consequences, there's stages, all this. You could have a widget that was sort of dedicated to a particular step in the workflow. Like, for example, in the CRM, the routing widget lets you drag and drop and move the order of collections around. and then once you hit save or tell the prompt, yep, go update, then that means that the next step in the workflow can now take place, which is generate the invoices for everyone who's due on that day, generate the manifest for the trucks, that sort of thing. So the widget pops up, you do the thing, and then you move to the next stage in the process, which has its own dedicated widget that has useful things for doing that task.
Okay, so if there's a flow like you want to cancel this run that involves a rebate or even a cost, let's say cost
Yeah,
to the customer,
which is
involves
like
an
needs approval.
invoice, the accountant needs to know about it,
Yeah, then the
the
money needs to
project
be
manager needs to
transferred.
say yes.
Yep.
So when you click the first one, then the next one will be the next widget in the flow, and you can see the states. And you're like,
For
okay, right,
yeah,
we've just done that.
depending on your permission levels.
Right, and it's like, okay, so now, right, you've just changed, or you've been allowed to change X, but
Yeah.
in order to change X, which is
Yeah, so
dependent on Y,
a
you
real
can
simple
change it to something
example
else.
is when the duty manager is doing the routing and then they've rearranged the routes and they click save, then the bot should know that the next step in the workflow is probably um, generating the manifest. And so it immediately flicks the state board to show the manifest widget or whichever widget is configured to be displayed when you're at that stage in the workflow.
Yeah, that seems helpful. It does beg one obvious useful widget, which is shit, I shouldn't have clicked that. I know you told me all about that. Thank you, system. I clicked it. It's like, fuck, where's
Undo,
my cat?
yeah, undo might be a undo's definitely available as a prompt, but that's an interesting one. Because that's Git level almost. Like we want to take advantage of Git to be able to do undos, where it's like I want to, like reversing a commit is making a commit that exactly undoes whatever just happened, and so that's the function you want, but it's fairly universal. It's not specific to any given
It's,
situation.
hmm, it's not, but if you undo, say, one step, if you knew the previous commit that you're trying to undo, then it's just a widget. All you need to do is know what the commit hash is. If it's more difficult for nested undos, as it usually is.
Yeah, or undos that require a process to be redone.
Yeah,
Like
or undos that actually, like we were talking the other day about what happens if two people are writing the same piece of
yeah,
thing. It's like,
I think it's
it gets more
too. I
complex.
don't know the answer right now. I know that Git allows every possible form of undo that you could want. I think we need to just see
Yeah,
what
well, let's
happens.
mark it. Mark that one up.
Yeah.
A single level undo, I think, would be polite, but
Mm.
nested undos, I think, has got complexity in this that we need to
Mm.
think about.
So yeah, I mean, this is where I'm at with widgets. Widgets seem to be able to be almost grouped. Like every widget, no matter what you do with it, is probably gonna have this Git navigation thing where you go through revision history. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, you can build up this widget by pulling in the Git revision history component and smushing it onto the TPS report viewer. And now you've got the TPS report viewer with the history in place.
And presumably, just to check, when you go back through history, say on the TPS, you
Yeah,
go boom, 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 2 months ago, right? Okay,
yeah.
there's still actions you can take there, but now we are in a fork.
It does, yeah.
at the time.
There are actions you can take there. I don't know what they are just now. It might go in read only mode. It might not. It might be something like, a rerun this in a fork, or I'm not actually sure.
Mm.
But
I think it might be context sensitive to actually what
yeah,
they're trying to
we'll
do.
start with read only because that's at least something, and then we'll just
Yeah,
see how it feels. Let's keep in mind that all the apps that everyone's used to do not have the ability to navigate history in full snapshots of the app in the way that we do here. And
yeah,
so,
yeah,
how
yeah,
people want to use that or expect that to work is going to be, like it's already a feature beyond what they get. So, if we didn't display it, probably no one would ask for it.
yeah. And the current state of the art sucks
Yeah,
because really all you've got to do is go back through browser history,
yeah,
and that's
yeah.
it.
Your history is disconnected from the logic of the app, whereas in
And the
Git,
state as well. Yeah,
yeah, history is first class in Git, and so there is a way to surface that elegantly. I'm not sure what it is just yet. We'll start with just being able to browse.
yeah. Okay. I
Right.
like
So,
this.
yeah. So now we're starting to see if you imagine that these widgets are made of thoroughly tested conventional code that displays in a UI that might have come from a third party that was pulled in from a library,
Hmm.
at that point, you can start to imagine assembling widgets together where I might take a search widget and draw it above a table display widget.
Sure. Or the thing immediately came to mind is okay. So you're talking about a customer. You might have three things that the company wants to always have displayed when you're talking about a customer, like cancel next route, view the details, number three, whatever. Um, and so the context of displaying one widget is identical if you're going to wrap those widgets into a context of why are you displaying this widget at all. It's the same question is if you've got a context that requires the display of one widget, it seems reasonable that you can say there's a context once it's detected that displays three widgets, and it's always got to be those three widgets.
Um, Maybe let me try and explain what I think you mean, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
tell me if we're talking about the same thing. So if we allow very simple layout controls to the bot, as in
Mm-hmm.
draw this widget first, then draw this one, then draw this one, right? So it
Yeah.
just lays out in a vertical stack.
Mm-hmm.
You can get more done because I don't need a table widget with a search. I just need a search and the table widget. Now that means that I could connect the search widget with the routing widget, and so when I hit the search, when I type in the search, it's gonna pipe the whatever I'm
Mm-hmm.
typing into the routing widget as opposed to into the table widget, and so it is crude, but you can get a lot of power out of these very simple blocks being rendered, right? Like take this widget that does the Git navigation.
Mm-hmm.
I might want to not show that and just show the pure TPS report depending on the context of what we're talking about. And
Mm-hmm.
then the user might be like, hey, uh, I want to go back in history. And then it's like, okay, the dude wants history. Let's give him the Git widget locked to the history version that he's talking about, which was like X months ago. Then we'll
Mm-hmm.
give him the TPS report viewer, which takes its commit information from the get widget, and then it allows the user to click forwards and back in the get widget, which gives him far more capability than he would have in a pure text-based interface. But he doesn't need that all the time, so you don't want to show too much, if you get what I mean. Like you want to show just enough app, because that's how people get lost, is when they get presented with this basically a fucking
Journey off.
nuclear reactor control center's worth of buttons and dials and widgets and notifications popping up and all this shit, and you're like, oh my god, all I wanted was to cancel a customer's collection.
Mm.
And so this ability to dynamically assemble an app is sort of, I think is what we've been chasing for a while.
And no, so that yes, sorry, I said no there. Yes, I agree.
You did say no.
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways of doing that. You can give in the header the markdown of the widgets you have available. It's all cool, and leave it to the bot side, whether the context involves this button, that button. I think what you're saying is we need those buttons to actually be orchestrated somehow, so that when you've got a search and you've got a table, you probably want to search the table.
Correct. But then there's other times when you want to just present tabular information, but you don't want to provide search because that's not what you were asked for example.
Right. So my question is, do we give these primitives, as in widgets, do we give the bot the right to display them, or the alternative is we also bundle with description saying, okay, if he's talking about X, you want these 3 widgets, and that is effectively one widget as far as the bot's concerned, because all it's looking at the description.
No, because the combinations are too great. You want just
right. So the first one,
you want to explain the rules about this is how the stateboard works. Whichever one you call first, that will display first. Give an example of using the search button on top of the table button, and then
I think that's the better way of doing it, because also remember, at every point through the NL interface, the user can actually see what they want to display. It's like you display a table. I need to search this table.
Right.
Like,
or you might be like, I want the search below the table, please.
Sure. Yeah.
Something, like stupid shit like that.
Which points on preferences, actually, which is another topic. Yeah.
Okay. So, the point of all that was just saying that it is impossible to be as rich an environment as we can. We need widgets because they can present information in a far more dense form than pure chat can.
Mm-hmm.
And as well, these widgets may have some actions. And I'm saying that I highly doubt that now or even in the near future we'll be able to generate the widgets from scratch, but we can absolutely code them, test them, and make them very, very bot friendly, and then assemble, once we've got the atom of jitters figured out, and it is not a blank slate, it is definitely a tested unit. You can prove me wrong, but
no, I agree with the testing thing. It's like, this thing does that.
Yeah.
Without doubt.
Yeah.
Which is great. Which is, going back to one of my examples is run payroll.
Right.
You don't want
an experimental just-in-time thing that's only ever been run right here. You want the tested tool. And so
also, we could pistol whip a bot in order to generate that, but we wouldn't be able to test it. Well, we could do it probabilistically, but we wouldn't be able to do it.
Either way, it seems like to get assurance out of a probabilistic system takes time. No matter how good your scale or how good your compute is,
And then
you
the
will.
model changes, and all your really important
No, no.
real
I was
world
meaning
things.
if you're going to do it in real time. If you're going to
Yeah,
do it in real time to provide assurance for a probabilistic system,
no,
it
you'd have
will
to be running all the tests every
it will
time,
always take
every time.
time. It doesn't matter how much power you have; it will take longer than the user wants to sit there. And
It seems very reasonable.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah. It's almost like a law of AI that it's like you gotta give it a Lego block. And as a human, I different humans have different Lego block sizes. You know, like I don't know how to make microprocessors. I was given that. I treat it like a Lego block. I plug
oh,
it in.
you're talking about the kind of layers thing. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. You
right.
just
And
assume that the lower level is just going to do it because
the
you're
lower
working on this
level
level.
is predictable
Yeah,
and simple. I'm sure it's far from that. I'm sure it's far from that. But that's how it presents to me, and that's what the bots are good at. And
yeah,
so
no, I
these
agree.
widgets are starting to come into focus now as something that is a very, very powerful enhancing tool, and it came about because of the TPS report analysis problem. Now, if you don't mind, may I jump back to the TPS report format?
Yes, but just a heads up. I know one's slightly borrowed time on
No,
the hour,
okay,
but I'll keep going until you know real world. But yes, let's keep going.
okay. Um, what I need from you is I need more of these handover test things
Right. Okay.
because
So
these help me incredibly because they show me what you want,
yeah, yeah, good.
right? So that's the
So
thing, and you don't. Oh dear, I lost my net again. But it doesn't have to be a lot, right? But you gotta give me this because this is what I need to understand what you want out of the system. In a perfect world, I would get from you a list of test descriptions that are all that you think you need to be able to only use our platform for your bot programming and nothing else. And if
right,
I can have
right.
that collection of effectively user stories, I can then work towards making that a reality for you.
Okay. So let me realistically, I probably only got about 8 minutes left, but we'll see. Let me show you what I've got with that because I'm
Okay.
pretty
Uh,
content with where it is.
And
Well,
very
okay,
quickly,
so
I have added this configure option
mhm.
to solve the problem of how do you set up a new customer and then change identity. So configure means I will run this test and then I will start a new thread and enter this test. So I get the system state or the file system state that that test did, but the thread is clean.
Right, brilliant. So on configure, I could put in set up a new customer. Uh, um, for example, put in another customer on the same route, and
Yep.
then right, that's the initial state,
Yeah, and the
and
thread gets
then
blanked. Now the other way you could do that is you could run a command
that's
in the
nice.
prompt that said reset the thread or give me a new thread, but I think for now
No,
I just wanted to run with configure.
no, this is better than putting it
Right.
with
Okay, and
the
then that
thread.
solves the
Yeah,
identity problem for now,
yeah,
but it's really just a way to get the system state with no thread pollution.
yeah, exactly. And when it runs set up a new customer, we don't really care what the data is. Say set up a new customer, comes back with Jane Smith at 123 State Street. Um, then that the expectation, say if the test was tell me about Jane's address, you want 123 State Street. So there's a link between the initial state and the expectation. Given that simple example, so the test is tell me the address of Jane Smith. which is the
Right,
prompt that you put in.
right. So
The
you'd need to figure
configuration.
out how to refer to that as like the first customer or the second customer or things like that,
Right.
because you would have to retrieve that from file system since you don't have it in thread.
Yeah, and you can well, you need to inject it at runtime of the test. So configure customer James Smith at this address, and it's like before. It's like well, it's actually the expectation. So the prompt is I want to change James Smith's address from 123 State Street to 124. An expectation is Gene Smith's now at 124 State Street. That's a
Right.
simple example. But the expectation needs to know what the initial state is, because otherwise, what you're checking. This was the problem that we were talking about the other day when I was saying baking in 10 customers. If you remember that, it's
Yeah.
like, well, that 10 is going to change. But with the configuration, if we can pass information from the configuration to the expectation, then the test
Yeah,
itself is true.
I think the way to do that is to load it on thread. So
Mm-hmm.
you'd say something like your first prompt would be, um, give me the first customer, show me the first customer. It does it. Now the customer's data is in thread. Then you say change the customer to blah blah blah, and then the expectation. So currently the expectation is only able to look at the threads, and so that it's tempting to try and make the expectations able to do more than that, but so far that actually seems sufficient, because you could do it the other way around where you're like, update the first customer to have the address of blah 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 blah. It goes and does it, and then you say read in the first customer, and then the expectation or the assessor looks at what got loaded in and compares the address, you know, like the expectations, I want to make them not programmable. I want to make them only look at the thread, because they're not really there to look at what the thread did. They're really there to look at the thread. And I argue that that is sufficient to test an AI based system.
Yes, but the expectation needs to know what it's expecting.
Yeah, but
This is
there's what I was
this is
saying
like
is that
instantiation
there's
in
ways to
Prolog,
word it.
right?
There's ways to word it, and there's ways to add extra lines in your prompt that will load the information you want the expectation to appraise into thread.
Well, here's an example. So this is how Prolog does it. It's like we've got a variable, but it's uninstantiated. So you could say load a customer, call that customer X, run the prompt, change the address of this customer to 124 State Street.
Right,
Expectation is customer X now has the address 124 State Street.
right.
And that is invariant. That's, you can write that test, but you need to instantiate what you put in, because you don't know whether you put in Jane Doe. Maybe there's quite a lot of information and so on. You might want to talk about their ID, whatever, but having an uninstantiated variable at the configuration and then be able to refer to that uninstantiated variable once it's being instantiated
I don't get
kind
it.
of
Like
collapses
that,
that
that
problem.
seems like it'd work just fine.
Um, so how would you, well, take that simple example. I might be wrong on this one. So how would you do that one? So the configuration is separate. It just preloads data
Yeah,
and
it
tells you
preloaded some
anything,
data.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then it's a new thread.
yeah.
Now, you could do choose a random customer,
That
or
doesn't
just the
seem.
first
Yeah,
customer, or whatever.
that seems dangerous because you don't know what you're going to
Right,
get.
right,
But
exactly.
if you've
But
preloaded it to have the customer name that you said, then when you write your expectation, you know that too, right? As the author of the test file, you know the information that carries between the tests because you wrote it.
yes, but yeah, that's less powerful than I think what I'm talking about. Say if you you put in the create a random customer with random details,
Right.
and so the configuration is at runtime. So we're not
Yeah.
typing in Jane
Yeah.
Smith,
Yeah. Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
And then perform some kind of operation on that. And
Yeah.
then what we want to do is see the delta. Has that operation done,
Right.
given the fact that we've got a random thing?
Yeah.
So
So
the ability,
the first thing would be to read the customer so that it's in thread. Then do the update, which at the very least would show a function call that occurred in thread, but the results will probably not be in thread. And then lastly, prompt it to read again from the customer, and the expectation is that the first piece of data loaded has been changed as instructed to the second piece of data.
yeah, okay, yeah, that would also work. By the using uninstantiated and instantiated variables, actually you can refer directly to it instead of quite wordily saying the thing that we're working on has this changed in this way, but it's essentially the same thing. So yeah, that would also work.
Yeah, I
It's
just
just
want
this
to,
is
I just,
it's a well trodden path on Prolog about uninstantiated variables, and then as
yeah,
soon as
we'll
you
see how
know,
we go, but it's so
yeah,
far, I'm increasingly convinced that expectations that don't do any operations, so no function calls from the bot, that just
mhm.
simply read the thread. So far, it seems like that's enough. Yes, it's not elegant in some cases, but I swear to you that the loss of elegance from the freedom you would give people to do more things
Yeah,
is
well,
more
I'll roll with that.
damaging.
I'll roll with it.
Because I
Yeah,
just want to keep the programming to one spot and one spot only, and that is the prompts, and that's it. That's the only place that programming happens. Because otherwise, like in the expectations, if you allowed prompting or programming or other things, now the system is sort of like, how did you test the tester in that case? You know, like,
yeah, yeah. And also, we'll probably get quite far. Just be able to, well, at the first level, we'll be able to get to the point of saying, okay, so set customer Jane Smith 123 State Street, do an operation, and you expect the result to be the delta between the initial state and the process that you just carried out. And it's like, does that work? Uh, I think probably we'll need to revisit this because uh, there's certain things you might want to do, like
yeah,
you know.
look, we'll need to
But
revisit a
don't worry about it
lot.
for now.
Yeah,
Don't
I
worry
just
for
want
now.
to get the
Okay.
basic system up and
Yeah.
running with just
Okay.
enough for us to get going. There's like this wall of possibility coming up for us that if we can just get over it, a lot of these
Yeah.
concerns you have may or may not need solving, but we'll have some new ones as well. And I want to see the new ones. I want to see the things that we can't think of.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm probably
Gotta
out of
go.
time, which is
Okay, let's go.
okay. Well, I'll send you. I'll very briefly talk through what I've been doing. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is to get these kind of user stories through that actually hit the system, the hit artifact specifically. In order to do that, I've used the running CRM that we've got.
Yep.
Then I created a bot that took in identified each of the users, and then told it, asked it for what the permissible things that could each do, and then that's the first level of tests. Then I asked what are the permissible two-step things. So one user doing something with another, and then three-step, and then four-step. And what I've got is a whole bunch of now is still talking in the language of the CRM, but this process is actually really helpful because now I can go, well, I'm just reading one. It's a customer request an emergency pickup
Do you want to share
for a
your screen
hazardous
so I
item.
can see it?
Yeah, sure. I'm just Where have my time here? Limit.
We can go like this. This is all. I mean, we covered the points
Yeah,
that I wanted to, and I just wanted to reiterate how bad I want these stories from you.
yeah. So my point being is, it's actually from given the right prompting from an ERD, you can you can get a good coverage, but only if you do these multiple steps. So
Oh,
okay,
like so you're driving multiple user usage, so
right,
that starts to approach fuzzing or simulation, which is a later stage for us. We need this what we're doing right now is akin to unit testing. You're
right. Yes.
doing fuzz testing on a complete system, which is
Well, I'm trying to not give you a bum steer that we need to go then against. So this is why. Okay, so we got one step. It's like I contact. Now, this is not enough in there in order to hit artifact, but what it is incredibly useful is what I'm going to be doing is looking at this and saying, okay, so what's happening under the hood here? I contact red lid admin. What does that mean? To request a change to my pickup date. Okay, so um, I'll be hand translating that, as I modify. Okay, right now there's hidden nuance inside
so
of
that
this.
okay. So if we generate this and generate it thoroughly, this can
Yeah,
become sort of like the help file of the system, or so that when a user says, well, what if I want to do blah, blah, blah? And it's like, well, in that scenario, what you would do is you would set the customer record, then the routing manager would do this and then that. And so
yeah,
if we've
yeah,
generated
exactly.
these things, deduplicated them, run them with their variations, and we know that they work as expected, then we can include very condensed forms of them as the system prompt for the help agent, because the help agent can talk about these different scenarios. Because if a user asks a question and it's not within the scenario list, that's a problem. We need to take that and expand our coverage.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
more
yeah,
importantly, the bot will be able to generate the scenario live and be like, let me show you. Here's a simple example. I've just forked production. We're going to do blah, 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 blah. And now your step is to, and then,
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
acts as,
Precisely,
it,
precisely.
yeah,
And naturally, I'll not go through this here. Naturally, you could fuck around with temperature and get more
right,
madness, or less madness,
right.
and see if the actual tests still work.
Yeah, because no matter how many times you ran this on what temperature settings, you would get a logarithmic curve for the number of new scenarios that you could generate. And
Right.
so if we plotted that curve, we could use our judgment to say, look, it's, we're burning tokens and it's not really moving. So
Diminishing returns,
we
and at
probably
some point it
consider,
converges. Right, it
yeah,
converges on a good probabilistic number.
we're like, the
Like,
system is probably done. Like it is
yeah,
thoroughly tested and there hasn't been a new
right,
scenario put to us ever. So
exactly. And we could rerun the tests at you can double the number of tokens you burned, and you're going to get the same number, which is what convergence is all
right,
about.
right. That's
Yeah,
actually really cool because that is better than any system you can conventionally get because it used intelligence in a way that I've not really heard of people using the AIs like this, but this is a way that the AI did a huge number of clever things and then scrunched them down into this condensed little packet. And you're like, that
yeah.
is smarter than a human because it did more work and then condensed it.
But also because you've told it what the system is to start with, it's filled out all the nooks and
Yeah,
crannies,
it's like you
and the more
told it
runs
the
you've got, the more
physics.
nooks and crannies you
You
get.
were like, here's
Yeah,
the physics of the system, off you go.
yeah.
That's
So
fascinating.
yeah, so I'm getting good results on this. I'll probably be able to give you more detail tomorrow.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay, well,
that's a
I'm gonna keep
direction I'm
going.
going
I'm
in.
gonna go keep going with the TPS report generation, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's looking really good. And then once I have that, then I'm going to start writing the actual tests for things, which is why I need your stories. And then we can make a crappy little widget to just
Yeah, nice.
display stuff, and
Now,
then we can start experimenting with showing widgets on the staples.
yeah. Now, one question, because I've got a choice here. I can the whole human point looking through this create test descriptions that actually talk about artifact functions, or I can keep it at the CRM level, and we can apply what functions are needed. What's the helpful thing? Do I go down to the artifact and say, for example, okay, so request a change in pickup dates that requires a write to a thing called our customer record.
Sorry, can you
Then
ask me the question again? I didn't quite understand it.
sure, it's the context which is most useful to you on the first set of tests. So I could write these in purely artifact terms.
These are
So
not. These are not. These are not useful to me immediately. These are useful in like pass number 3. Pass number 1 is what is it that you do, not what is it that the CRM does. What is it that
right,
you do? Because if we can get you using our tools, you will be faster to make the tools for the CRM
okay,
and
good,
these like
good, good.
third pass things like that.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say that. So my plan was now I've got my eye in about what to task in order to generate these kind of prompts about all the niches and so on. So I don't need to think wide. I just need to think about each one in each term. I was going to go back to the scenario of using how to create a bot, create a bot, to create a CRM, because that's actually more how I'll be using Artifact, because if we're talking about moving between bots and all this, CRM
Yeah,
is still one bot, right? It's got entities, sure. But so that's a scenario I was going to do around create a bot. It's like create a bot with how,
yeah,
bootstrap from that into another one, used it, so on, went backwards and forwards, lots of cut and pasting and so on, and that should drive out a few things. Now, I'm just going to use what how gives for say what can you do. It gives a list of functions. I'm just going to use those as my only tools. And then
yeah.
I'm going to use them in a way that seems right,
Yeah,
and if it's
the
not
other the
actually
other
what it
piece I
does,
I think we need is to allow you to map functions so that you can provide your own descriptions, because it turns out that function names and descriptions are part of prompting. And so I need to give
yeah,
you a way to modify that without requiring a new code deployment in Artifact, because the functions, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
that'd be cool. That'd
Yeah,
be cool. But maybe only when we've got the testing suite in there,
yeah,
because
yeah,
what you don't want me to do
yeah,
is go and change the description, saying actually we're talking about jalapenos now instead of writing a file.
yeah.
Um,
So
okay, all right.
yeah, that's the thing, dude. Tell me
Good.
how we can get you off of this app and into
As soon
ours.
as as soon as I can do that, that base thing we're talking about, in the test scenario of moving information between bots and calling one bot from another,
Yeah, but I need
that
you to.
unlocks everything.
I know, but I don't
But
get
I'll
it
give you
enough.
more
You need to give
precise.
me
Yeah, yeah. I can give you
stories
more precise.
and multiple ones, because it's
Yeah,
still. My apologies. It's still too fuzzy for me to
yeah,
grab
yeah.
a hold
Yeah,
of.
the ball's on my court on that one,
Yeah, I'm
which is
just
why
at
I
a
was.
weird spot. Like, it's just the weirdest place. I'm like, oh man, I can see where we got to go, but I'm like, psh,
Yeah,
yeah,
man. When I get those across, which I think is going to be tomorrow morning,
okay,
uh, um, then that unlocks a whole bunch of stuff, and then we can find out
cool,
what else we're stuck on.
cool,
That'll be the next thing. That'll be a next thing. All right.
sweet, okay.
Nice one, man.
Thank you
Okay.
very much. I will
I'll
speak
see
soon.
you in 10 hours. All right.
Okay,
See you, man.
try out that app I sent you.
Yeah, I will.
Shoot,
Yeah.